Gentlemen, it has been a privilege playing with you tonight.
Today we are ranking nu metal albums from 2005, what I consider to be the final year of the, golden era of the genre. And we are starting with Mudvayne with Lost and Found. Banger opener in Determined, almost on par with my favorite tracks on LD50, and the band stated that that was the energy they wanted to go back to with this one. Pushing Through is also very infectious, and some other killer singles here in Happy, Fall Into Sleep, and Forget to Remember, which ended up on the Saw 2 soundtrack. Some great bass and more technical approach to Just, very raw and heavy. I've actually come to like this one a lot more than The End of All Things to Come over the years. Things really went off a cliff after this one, if you ask me, so I'm hoping that the new record is more on par with this. I'm putting it at best. Next up is Dope with American Apathy. When the sound goes boom, what you gonna do? Make a move.
How do you do, fellow kids?
After group therapy, I avoided Dope like the plague, so it wasn't until a long time later that I checked this one out, and it's still pretty lame, but I was surprised to hear them going back to more of the industrial sound of Felons and Revolutionaries. Tracks like Survive, No Way Out, and Bastard offer decent enough jams for headbanging, cringy lyrics, but the music is genuinely fun enough to make it a good time. There are definitely some moments, though, where it becomes, too stupid, so I'm gonna put this one at okay. We also have Disturbed with 10,000 Fists.
You walk out like a woman in suffering. You never know, you never.
As I've said, despite being deep in with nu metal as a kid, I was never a big fan of this band, but that said, I can enjoy a song here and there like Deify, Decadence, Stricken, and Sons of Plunder. Also dig the bass on the moody Overburdened. The songwriting is also admittedly much better than plenty of others here. I can actually sit through this one start to finish without feeling the need to hit skip, so I will put it at fantastic. And note too that all these lists are self-contained and relative to the other albums that we're talking about. I put this one a bit lower on its own discography tier list, same with Mudvayne, but you get the idea. But moving on, we have Karnivool with Themata. The debut album from this Australian band that is arguably more on the rock side of things, and get used to that because this again is the twilight years. A lot of these bands were going butt rock. But anyways, bit of a wimpy start with COTE, but things pick up with the very catchy title track. Also enjoy the bouncy staccato vocals and wah-infused riffs of Lifelike, and Synops has more of a Tool energy to it. Mixed bag with some higher points. Gonna put it at good tier. Then we have Taproot with Blue Sky Research. Now, if Welcome was a disappointment after how much I loved Gift, this was the nail in the coffin for me with this band. What an incredibly boring milquetoast excuse of a rock album. They abandoned pretty much any remaining nu metal aggression in favor of these mopey, forgettable songs. Not a hit among them. Feels like they tried and failed to be Chevelle. I put this one at bad, and it pains me to say that, because again, I love their debut, and as always, I'm interested to hear your own thoughts and rankings down below. I don't expect you to agree with me. That would be really boring anyways. Also, if you're enjoying the video so far, hit the like button. But next up, we have Korn with See You on the Other Side. The first album without Head and his guitar interplay with Monkey, that chemistry was a huge part of Korn's sound, so the change really kind of stands out to me on this one. Singles like Coming Undone continue to be very fun and infectious, but alternatively, Twisted Transistor jumps the shark a little bit, still catchy, but kind of lacking that Korn edge. I outright dislike Politics, and Tearjerker feels a little out of place. Quite a few tracks here are actually pretty bland and forgettable, but offset by better ones like Tenor a Two-Way, Liar, and maybe Love Song. It doesn't hold a candle to their previous material. Again, I would rank it fairly low in their discography, but it's still a better listen than some things here. I didn't hate going back to it. It is going to great tier. Moving on to Static X with Start a War. The Enemy doesn't waste any time getting into it. Really love Wayne's very Wisconsin Death Trip delivery on the verses, but not always in love with the more melodic Korn-inspired choruses, although I could argue that they actually do Korn better than Korn did this year. Plenty of bangers here too, like the title track, love the driving industrial beats on Pieces and Otsego Amigo, the rocking groove and electronics of Dirt House and Skinny Man, the unique infusion of brass instruments of I Want to Fucking Break It. Also, one of the more focused albums here at just 40 minutes and pretty consistent throughout. Again, it's not one of their best, I would say, but it's definitely one of the better ones here, and I was banging my head. It is going to best. And we have Sevendust with Next. Now, the band said that they felt studio pressure on this one to follow up Seasons, and that is just rarely a recipe for success, I would say. Hero is a decent opener, calling more back to the stuff on Animosity. Not great, but decent. Ugly kicks off with some cool guitars, but kind of gets corny moving into the chorus, and Failure is just kind of blah. Lejean sounding great as always, and while the heavier moments like Pieces and Silence are a welcome return, I wouldn't say they hit as hard as they did in their early material, but still. Not a terrible album on this list. It is going to good tier. Next up is Clawfinger with Hate Yourself with Style.
Sit back and hate yourself with style.
This is the 5th album from this Swedish band, and man, seeing that first track title reminded me once more of what a different time the 2000s were. Like, I get that this track is supposed to be a pro-gay and anti-homophobia statement, but what a misguided approach to it. And really, this entire album is packed with this very, like, I'm so edgy, deal with it kind of energy on tracks like Dirty Lies. It's not particularly good, but at least it's not boring, which is more than I can say of some of these records. I was kind of laughing through a lot of this one. I'm gonna put it at okay. Then there's Despair's Ray with Coll Set. The debut from this Japanese band, and it gives me some like orgy vibes at times with the electronic influences and general energy, but they also bring in strings and other eclectic instrumentation for more atmospheric elements. There's even some theremin on the super heavy In Vain. Also enjoy the synth parts on the almost danceable Forbidden. One of the more creative and interesting releases here, if a little inconsistent. I'm going to put it at great tier. We also have Bloodsimple with A Cruel World. The first of just 2 albums from this short-lived band, but I gotta hand it to them for having one of the heavier openers here, going right for the throat with Straight Hate. More nice heavy grooves on Path to Prevail and Blood In, Blood Out, and then we have the more melodic elements fused into What If I Lost It. The softer songs aren't as good, but work well enough, and Chad Gray shows up on Falling Backwards. The album was also produced by Gigi Garth and features bassist Kyle Sanders, also of Hell Yeah, and currently Kerry King. I hadn't listened to this one before, but I quite enjoyed it, actually. One of the few diamonds in the rough in a death knell year again for this genre. I'm putting it at fantastic. We also have Trust Company with True Parallels.
I'll push you closer to the
Their second album, and one I'd scarcely again call nu metal. There's some of that influence in tracks like Surfacing, but overall I'd say this has more in common with something like The Used more than Mudvayne. Solid listen with some catchy tracks. Of the more rock-oriented albums here, this is definitely a standout. I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we have Adema with Planets.
That sounds really boring.
Now, I was so disillusioned after the drop in quality of Unstable that I never listened to the albums that came after that, so the opening riff of Planets gave me some hope for the darker, heavier elements of the debut, but then the vocals come in and just shit all over that. There are some decent moments with the instrumentation here, like the bass on Enter the Cage, but as a whole, it's pretty shit, if you ask me. I did not enjoy this album. It's going to bad. We also have Il Niño with One Nation Underground.
He was a slave to the dirty system.
All's a sucker for use of tribal elements in this genre. They go so well with the natural groove of the music, bringing a lot of the Soulfly energy I was missing from Soulfly by this point in their career. Dig This War, My Resurrection, Turns to Grey, and Corazón of Mine. Also enjoy the more melodic songwriting on De La Vida, their third album, and I think it's a big improvement from the last 2, even if I hear more people talk about those. I'm putting this one at fantastic. And we have Tractor Bowling with Cherta. The second album from this Russian band that sonically reminds me a bit of Kitty with some Evanescence mixed in. Lucine has a lovely voice and emphasizes her singing skills over screaming, and I feel like the instrumentation brings a lot of similar dynamic influences as Ginger does now. Also appreciate that the lyrics are in Russian, which never take away from tracks like Sneg being incredibly catchy. It drags a bit, and it would be nice to get a little heavier at times, but overall I like it. I'm going to put it at good tier. Then we have Nonpoint with To the Pain.
I got a bullet with a name on it. Bullet with a name.
Fairly strong opener on Bullet with a Name on this 4th album with just a 1-year turnaround from the last one. More strong tracks in There's Going to Be a War, The Reckoning, and Code Red. Interesting use of brass on Explain Yourself. Inconsistent, but another case where I think this is an improvement from their previous, more popular albums that I don't really care much for, and based on the ratings, it sounds like this was the last one that fans really enjoyed. I'm going to put this one at great tier. Speaking of Soulfly, we have Soulfly with Dark Ages. Glad I was simultaneously working on the Soulfly tier list alongside listening to these albums, as this was not included on the list I was working off of, and I get it in that they had moved into a more groove metal direction at this point, but for the name and how good this album is in such a low point year, I had to include it. Max is super pissed on this one in the wake of another family tragedy in his 8-month-old grandson, as well as the murder of his good friend Dimebag Darrell. So many bangers like Babylon, Arise Again, Carved Inside, and Frontlines, and yet again some really delightful world music influences in Portuguese lyrics to break things up and help get this extra unique twist. Riot Starter also has some like the Prodigy energy to it and features Dave Ellefson on bass from Megadeth. I'm putting this at best. Then we have Flyleaf with Flyleaf. I'm So Sick may have been one of the last, great nu metal singles of the 2000s, and from what is ultimately more of just a Christian rock band. Solid debut from a group that I never loved, but generally enjoyed the singles from. Fully Alive is another great song, as is All Around Me. I'll never be too cool to not sing along to those choruses. Do they belong on this list? I'm not exactly sure, but I feel like if I didn't at least mention I'm So Sick, somebody would have been mad. And that is a great track. I'm going to put this at good tier. Then we have Limp Bizkit with the Unquestionable Truth Volume 1.
Imagine accepting the truth.
I don't normally include EPs, but there's always an uproar when I leave this one out, so here it finally is. After the incredibly divisive Results May Vary, very much living up to its name, they came back with this very much loved release with Wes Borland back in his rightful place on guitar. 7 tracks over 29 minutes, and it goes harder than most of the longer albums here. Great bass on The Truth, dark atmosphere on The Priest, and killer beat on The Key. Also love the riffs on The Story. I'm putting this one at fantastic. We also have American Head Charge with The Feeding. I loved The War of Art, so the 4-year gap between this and that had me wondering if the follow-up could live up to the hype, and I'm not feeling like it exactly does. It's a little less in-your-face heavy, often more slow, experimental, and leaning in the melodic directions. Personally, I'm not as big a fan of that, but there are still some serious bangers on here, like Dirty, Erratic, Leave Me Alone, Pledge Allegiance, and Loyalty. Downstream also gives a little Mike Patton to it. I'm going to put this one at great tier. Also going to include Chimaira with Chimaira. Another new metal gone groove metal crew that still seemed worth mentioning on the stronger side of things in this year. I still find myself missing some of those more industrial elements of the earlier material, but they more than make up with it with the headbanging riffs and heavy vocals. All thrash-infused ragers start to finish. My one complaint is that they tend to drag songs out longer than they need to, but other than that, really killer album. Love the surprise sort of 90s real-time strategy sounding ending of Pray for All as well. I'm going to put this one very high up on fantastic. A couple honorable mentions that I'm sure some people are going to say down in the comments. Seether with Karma and Effect. I don't think these guys are nu metal at all. Definitely not this album. If this is nu metal, then so is Puddle of Mud and Nickelback. Also almost included Rev Theory with Truth is Currency. This album has a few kind of nu metal sounding riffs, but never really escapes the post-grunge butt rock zone for me. Pretty forgettable as far as that style goes too. And also Trapped with Someone in Control. Slightly more of a case for this album to include them, but I've just never been a fan. Just know if I had included them, it would have been very low. I will actually, though, include Stained with Chapter 5.
Don't blame me, you didn't get it. Don't blame me, you didn't get it.
Now, maybe I shouldn't really include these guys either, since they hadn't really been nu metal since Break the Cycle, and that album already had one foot out the door. 14 Shades of Grey pissed me off enough when it came out as the follow-up to. I will say that the riffs going into Runaway do bring a bit more of that kind of Break the Cycle energy that I was missing, and there are a few heavier tracks still, like Paper Jesus, Falling, and King of All Excuses. But others, like Right Here, continue to be more Three Doors Down than Fade or It's Been a While. I do think it's at least better than So Far Away as a single. Overall, I'll say say that this is more listenable and less cheesy sounding than the last one, even if it can't hold a candle to the early stuff. So I put it at okay. We also have Bobaflex with Apologize for Nothing. The phrase that kept coming up listening to this one was, "We have Mushroom Head at home," although I think that they formed around the same time. But despite not being a big Mushroom Head fan either, this is just so much worse. Tracks like Bright Red, Violent Sex, and Turn the Heat Up also make them a potential candidate for my next Cringiest Bands video, and unlike Dope, the music doesn't save it here. I'm putting these guys at bad.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
And then, of course, we have System of a Down with Hypnotize and Mesmerize.
Waiting for my girl.
Another great set of albums from easily one of the best bands on this list overall. Attack is a great opening track, and Dreaming follows that up really strong. Kill Rock and Roll is super fun to sing along to, as is the title track, and I really dig the chorus of Tentative. Holy Mountains is another one of their more kind of powerful, mournful, darker sounding moments. BYOB is a classic, although I still maintain that it doesn't need to repeat so many times. Still lots of fun parts to scream along to. Cigaro has one of their best vocal performances by far. Also enjoy Violent Pornography.
Clip that.
Radio Video is fantastic and impossible to not sing along with, not to mention the great use of accordion. And then, of course, there's the beautiful Question. Great mix of humor and emotional weight. Probably the most impressive albums on this list overall in terms of both songwriting and performances. I am going to put both of these at best tier. Alright, I'll check out this playlist for more rankings of new metal albums by year, and this will probably be the nail in the coffin for that series. I'll probably put out a compilation. You can also check out more new metal rankings in their discographies here, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.